I'd like to welcome you to our session. This is Transforming the Intranet with Innovations for News, Sites, and Portals. My name is Dave Cohen.
I'm Debjani Mitra.
And I'm Nicole Woon.
We're program managers at Microsoft on the SharePoint product team. So this session really is about the intelligent intranet in Microsoft 365. I'm going to start at a high level and talk about a little bit of why the intelligent intranet's important. First, for knowledge sharing and discovery, your intranet is the platform for where your end users understand what lessons have been learned by the business. You know, if one part of the organization is working on something and they have an insight and they want to share that with the rest of the organization, the intranet is the platform that allows that. It allows you to seek out that knowledge, and it allows you to discover it, especially if it's the intelligent intranet. In a lot of cases, it'll bring that to you. It's also where shared content and business solutions happen. So a lot of business process in the SharePoint world, we consider this around lists and workflows. That happens in SharePoint on the intranet. And lastly, the intelligent intranet, for a lot of probably people in this room, your roles are probably around this area, which is communications and employee experience. So how do you effectively get a message, the information out to your end users effectively, quickly, wherever they are? And how do you facilitate feedback channels to those communications so that the people in your organization feel more connected, right? And that's where we're focusing this talk today, is communications and employee experiences. Now, it needs to be said, the intelligent intranet has to be simple. That means that it needs to be easy to get to. Content needs to be easy to create with little to no training. It needs to be accessible so that people can access the intranet wherever they are and whatever device they're on. But it also means that it needs to be accessible for people who have different needs when interacting with technology. It needs to be secure, and it needs to keep up to date with state-of-the-art security practices. It has to be integrated with the other parts of your business. So for example, if you're using Microsoft Word, we need smart hooks into Word and SharePoint so that information can flow back and forth between them easily. It has to be intelligent. It has to understand you, your work, what you work in, who you work with, so it can offer you information that you didn't know you needed. And finally, it needs to be extensible. That means two things. It needs to be extensible for the end user with no coding experience whatsoever, so creating complex workflows in a simple way with Microsoft Flow, but it also needs to be extensible for the pro developer, so with the SharePoint framework, for example. Now, at its core, SharePoint houses most of the information in your intranet, and it does that in the container that it has, which is sites. So within SharePoint, those sites contain files, news, lists, pages, and then what we announced last year in SharePoint Spaces are new mixed reality spaces. So SharePoint really is at the core of your intranet. Yes, you have email data that's stored in Exchange. You have chat information that's stored in Yammer or in Teams. But for the most part, SharePoint really is front and center as your intranet platform. Now, for the central pillar that we're talking about, communications and employee experiences, it's important to also mention Yammer and Stream specifically, because when it comes to the experience of being an employee at a place, these are two fundamental pillars alongside SharePoint for making sure that you can get new, rich media out to the people you're trying to communicate with, and also get their feedback and foster those communities and those feedback channels via Yammer. So over the last 2 years or so, we've really renovated the SharePoint intranet as a platform. We launched a brand new model for web parts, so our new client-side web parts. We completely changed how page authoring happens in SharePoint with modern pages, so that now anyone can create a modern page easily, quickly, with little to no training. We rolled out SharePoint News. In intranet scenarios, one of the key pillars is distributing news content to the people who use the intranet. And SharePoint News does this automatically. We rolled out communication sites and hubs, a new site for your biggest portals, and hubs as a way to group them together so that your intranet can reflect how your organization is built. We rolled out SharePoint Mobile, so people can get to the intranet wherever they are on any device. Most recently, we've been working on the publishing system. So closing the gaps with classic SharePoint so that you can have all the rich functionality in SharePoint publishing that you need, but in our new modern sites. And lastly, as announced this morning, home sites. The top of your intranet, the personalized landing experience for every employee in your organization. So before we dive into the demos and the rest of the session, I wanted to invite up a couple of our customers that we've worked with closely to have a bit of a discussion about what the intelligent intranet means to them. Welcome. First, could you introduce yourselves, please?
I'm David Johnson. I'm architect for Microsoft's internal tenancy.
Hi, I'm Nicole Rojas from Takeda. I am in communications, and I'm responsible for the executive communications for the IT team. So I kind of wear two hats.
And hello, my name is Harris. I'm a solution architect with Velux. We are a daylight and ventilation company by selling you skylights.
All right, great. So, panel, I had a couple questions for you, and I think the reason for asking these questions is to ground what the intelligent intranet means in some real-world scenarios. So the first question I have, really for Velux and for Takeda, is, Harris, we'll start with you. What was the motivation for moving to modern SharePoint?
So we've had historically a few struggles with SharePoint Classic. One of them being we had a very hard time talking to our frontline workers, right? The experience was not on par with like third parties or other systems. And then as well, what we heard by doing internal research is our community managers, people who post news and stuff on Classic, really kind of almost complained about the friction about creating news pieces. That would be a couple of those, but I can go on the other reasons.
So there's a lot of friction and costs associated with producing
Absolutely.
content in the past.
Yeah.
Okay, Nicole?
So my colleague this morning, Kevin Schramm, if you're at the keynote, kind of talked about the business side of our decisions around modern. But from a communications perspective, for me, it's really about changing the model from being a broadcast model to a multi-channel engagement opportunity where you can use a lot of the different tools in Microsoft 365 to engage your employees, create culture, produce content, so that includes everything from SharePoint to Yammer to forms to the comment sections on the bottom of pages. So really creating a dialogue is really important to us, and it's just one of the key benefits for me from a modern perspective.
Great. And that's something actually that we've heard a lot before is organizations today have higher expectations for the feedback channels that they have with their employees. And it's great to hear that modern SharePoint kind of promised that benefit. Now, question for you, David. We've been on the journey together, modernizing Microsoft's own intranet. What's the build experience been like? Building on modern is very different than building on classic. So what did we experience in terms of the cost, the effort, the time?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think, first of all, the simplicity of it has kind of changed the game dramatically for us. That with internally, like we think about our corporate portal and Microsoft Web, where for a former version of our portals would often take months to kind of plan, build, and get everything together before you're done. The new MS Web was literally 3 weeks of work between the time we started and the time we were basically ready to go live. Now, where things we're iterating on afterwards, but basic portal was done. So then you just worry about, okay, get the content finished, but everything's done. So really, our intranet, and as we think about kind of moving from classic to modern, has all been about iteration and speed. And I'd say the simplification has been fantastic for us.
That's actually really incredible to hear because the elapsed time has been a lot longer than 3 weeks because they've been waiting for us to build features to adopt. But man, the idea that Microsoft's own company portal, MSW, could be built in a fully 3 weeks is a really incredible statement. So,
yeah, and to the business team directly, I think the other big thing for us, okay. The other difference for us is that the business is able to publish directly on the portal now, as opposed to having some SharePoint specialist supplier who's managing all the content. The person who owns the content is now literally doing the publishing, and that's again changing our dynamic and simplifying.
Excellent. Harris, I know you guys at Velix are deep in the middle of building your new intranet.
Yes,
we talk about that frequently. What's that process been like for you?
I can more or less echo what you said. The simplicity of building, again comparing to classic, we had to develop a lot of features. Like the feature gap with modern, what to our requirements is basically almost 90% done there. So we can pretty much just start using it. We actually had an intern. We gave her we tasked her, can you just mirror the last round of news pieces in modern, just to see how that works. She's an intern, like I said, and she required zero whatsoever education. She was just right on. She could just use it. So it's super simple, super. I mean, I can just go on how good it is, right? So.
Yeah, that's a great endorsement. The idea that someone can come in with no training whatsoever and just jump into building sites and pages in SharePoint is almost unheard of 10 years ago.
It's actually one of your words. It's delightful to use, right? It's really delightful to use compared to classic.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Excellent. So, Nicole, Takeda's already rolled out their modern intranet. Has it lived up to it? Have you seen the benefits that you were hoping for, and what other benefits have you seen?
Sure. Yeah, we definitely have been on the leading edge of rolling things out, and so I really appreciate the fact that our users can just jump in and get going. But for me, a lot of the benefits, again, from the communications perspective, is one, it reflects our corporate branding, which is obviously very important and super easy to do. But it also is really flexible. So for me, when I'm communicating, there's a lot of things that are important from a timing perspective, say. So our overly customized classic SharePoint was very difficult. Like I could publish something and I wasn't sure exactly when it was going to go out. It could take an hour to publish, and there's time-sensitive things, often in communications, that we really need to be very specific and very clear on in terms of a timing. And that's what I love about Modern is I can go in and publish it, and it shows up instantly. If something needs to change, I can quickly go in, edit it, republish, off it goes. So it gives us that flexibility, particularly from a communications perspective, that I didn't have before, especially when there's kind of important things going on within the organization. So that's been just fantastic and really a breath of fresh air for me, because I don't want to go back to classic, and it really hurts me emotionally to have to do so. So I'm like, please give me modern if I have to go back and do something in classic, because it's just, the workflows take longer, it's really complicated. I have to, sometimes I would have to get an IT person involved, whereas what Dave was saying is I can just do it myself now in modern, and that really frees up me to focus on the content, the flow, things like that. So.
Got it. David, last question. How have you seen the benefits at Microsoft? What has that changed about Microsoft IT's practices and enabled you to do?
Yeah, well, I think there's a few parts of that. Is one, from an end user perspective, we've seen businesses just simply spin up their own sites really quickly and easily now. That historically we talked about MS Web and the big portals, but even the smaller things, even just real estate seeking to spin up a new modern campus site, or HR wanting to spin up a new program site. Simple for these businesses just to get their sites out, and that's kind of changed the game a little bit for IT too. We basically enable self-service provisioning now at this point, and anyone therefore can provision a new communication site for the company, and IT can feel comfortable about it because we have our own ability to control the customizations. We've minimized customizations. We no longer have JavaScript running everywhere. We just have it SharePoint Framework solutions on the modern sites as people need them. And we've reduced the customization footprint dramatically because of that. And we've also increased IT protection because of that.
Excellent. All right, well, thank you to our panel. I hope that you guys found that perspective useful.
Thank you.
just as an aside, having been on this entire journey for modernizing SharePoint, intranets and portals, it's really amazing to hear those stories, because I can remember back when none of those projects have started, and so seeing the end result is really special for me. So today, we're going to talk about from the bottoms up, right? We'll start with SharePoint News and the content that you create in your intranet, the content that is most important to get out. Then we'll move on to communication sites, the sites that need to reflect the different types of businesses within your organization. We'll talk about hubs and associated sites, so grouping those sites together into logical units that start to reflect your business. And then finally, home sites, announced this morning, really completing the picture. And frankly, a statement that the modern intranet is ready for you, right? It is time to start building if you've been waiting. So I'd like to bring out Nicole and hand it off to her.
Great. SharePoint News is built on the page infrastructure that we all know and love, but it's special in that it leverages an intelligent distribution system, allowing people to access news anywhere on any device. You're able to create compelling communications using the power of Microsoft 365 in a variety of dynamic content. You're also able to scale the reach of your story, and this is done whether someone following your site knows when something new has been published, or you're able to manually push it to them through email or Teams. You can also engage with your audience, and they can engage right back by liking, commenting, and sharing with others. Finally, this scales from the individual to a group of team members to an entire organization. With that, I'd like us to go ahead and switch into a couple demos to show you how news is built from the ground up and where this rolls up on pages. So here we see the Contoso News site. It's a communication site, and a core group of content editors and authors are manually curating and promoting this content. This is serving as an authoritative source of news, and so we've deemed this as an organization news site. What this means is that there will be a visual block of color behind the text in the title, in the news roll-ups, the SharePoint start page, and on the news tab in mobile. It's very simple to set this through PowerShell, and it's a great way to make sure that your message lands with your users. Now we can see on the Contoso News site that this is composed of a variety of different news web parts. That visual block of color that I mentioned before is showing up on Leadership Connection, another organization news site. Now with that, let's go ahead and work on authoring a news post so we can show you some of the latest features we've added here. I'll go ahead and click on New and News Post. And the first thing that pops up is the option to select a page template. This is a great way to ensure brand consistency across your site and make it super simple for users to create content quickly and beautifully. There are a couple out-of-the-box templates from SharePoint, so we have a visual-oriented and a basic text option, and you can see previews for these on the right-hand side. In addition to the out-of-the-box templates, you also can create your own custom templates, and it's as easy as going to an existing page on your site and saving it as a page template. Now, many of you in the audience are here representing your company or your organization on a business trip, and will likely bring back that information to share your findings with the rest of your team. Someone on my site has set up a conference recap template, and this is going to be a great solution for me to be able to just plug in content and publish the findings from a recent conference that I went to. So let's go ahead and create the post here. And we can see in just a matter of seconds, I already have a canvas that's pre-populated with web parts, so that I can quickly plug in information and get going. I'll go ahead and add a title here. And the first thing that I'd like to do is update the image in the title region. I'm going to leverage the new Organization Assets feature. Now, some of your companies have brand teams that have a variety of high-quality, brand-approved images, and they want to make this available for use by all of their employees. We have a way that you can pull in images directly in your SharePoint editing experience that have been approved and are organized by a set of libraries that have been registered. Here we can see I have a photography and a logos library, and I'll go ahead and click into photography. And it maintains any folder structure that you might be leveraging inside your source site. Now, at the conference that I recently went to, they announced a new product line of drones, and our brand team was able to upload those approved images directly into our site. So here, I'll go ahead and select this image and open it. And we can see that after I set the focal point, I have a beautiful title region that starts off my page. Next, I'm going to go over and add some content on the actual recap itself. I'm a scrupulous note taker when it comes to conferences, and I tend to take my notes in Word or in OneNote. I can go ahead and copy and paste it directly into this section, and it's going to retain all of that formatting that I had originally, whether it's bolding or bullet points. Now let's look at a couple of the web parts here. We have the Maps web part, and my conference also just so happened to take place at the MGM Grand, so I'll go ahead and select that. And it's very simple for me to change how this will be visually represented to my readers. Whether I zoom in, change it to an aerial look. I can also go down and add a couple of the other attendees. The nice thing here is that if I hover over her compact card, I can then expand into a more detailed card that's pulling information from across Microsoft 365. I can see her contact information. If I need to copy her email address for later, I can do that. I can see some of the files that she's worked on recently, and I can also look at her org chart to see who some of her peers might be. Now, the dynamic nature that you've seen on both the map and the people web part are things that I am able to do not only in the editing experience, but my readers are also able to engage in that same way when they're looking at the published post. The last thing I'll do is add some metadata to my news posts. And the way that this is helpful is that it adds additional information that will then help my posts align with similar news posts and show up in roll-ups. I'll go to the page details button in the command bar, and you can see the section called properties. I have a column called featured. I'll go ahead and select yes, and I think I'm ready to go ahead and publish. When I hover over the post news button, I see a helpful tooltip that lets me know what happens when I publish my post. And in a matter of seconds, we can see that it's been posted, and we're brought back to the home page, where my conference recap is now showing up in a roll-up. So let's take a look at how these news roll-ups are constructed, and I'll go ahead into the edit experience here. The first one is pulling from this site as the news source, and you can select a variety of layouts. You can choose a list view, you can choose a rotating carousel. Here I have it set as tiles. The filter that I just set on my previous page was the featured equals yes, and you can see that that's pulling all of the news posts and pages that have been tagged with that. Now you may be wondering why my conference recap didn't show up in that first tile. It's because I'm leveraging the ability to organize my news, and I have the President Keynote speech pinned in that first slot. The rest of the news is pulled automatically, and so I'm able to have my recap show up in that second area. The next roll-up that we'll look at is pulling from a variety of different sites. I have it pulling from Leadership Connection, Global Sales, and Development. Now, if I wanted to add another site to this roll-up, I can search by the title or enter a URL if I know that offhand. I can also intelligently see what sites I visit most frequently, as well as ones that I've visited recently. We're excited about the ability to now filter across multiple sites, and we can see that this roll-up is showing those that were most recently added in the last month. The last web part that I'll show you here is the recommended for you, and this is showing news that is recommended for the current user. This is personalized to every individual that visits this page, and it's dependent on the sites that they interact with and the people that they work with. News serves as the foundation for sharing content across your organization. It's easy to build, and it's easy to help publish and promote to the rest of your organization. With that, I'd like to invite Debjani onto the stage to share a bit about how sites empower all of us to share content, knowledge, and resources.
Thanks, Nicole. So Nicole just showed us how you can author beautiful news posts with SharePoint. But these news posts live within sites. So now we'll jump a level up and talk about SharePoint Sites. Now, as many of you are well aware, with SharePoint, you can create two kinds of sites. The first are team sites, and these are intended to help with collaboration and teams to work together. And the second are communication sites, which are intended to have a small number of authors or editors, but many consumers. And in this session today, we'll mainly focus on communication sites. Now, communication sites have many different use cases, so let's quickly walk through some of them. The first is to share news and information. As you saw in Nicole's demo, the News at Contoso site is a communication site where organization news is posted to be shared with the whole organization. The second is for leadership, leaders to share their ideas and vision with the rest of the company. And such a communication site can play a really important role in employee engagement efforts in your company. Tomorrow at 9:45 a.m., we have a dedicated session on employee engagement, so do check that out if you would like to learn lots more. The third is as microsites, which provide a really focused service to the rest of the company, and we'll look at an example of this in just a few seconds. And finally, to share knowledge within communities of practice. So one example of this is within the OneDrive and SharePoint PM team, the leadership maintains a communication site where they post news and advice on how to be successful PMs. So with that, we'll jump into some demos. Here I am on the Brand at Contoso site, and this is a communication site that's maintained by the marketing team at Contoso to provide the rest of the company guidance on the most up-to-date way to represent the Contoso brand externally. So for example, if you were a Contoso employee going into a customer meeting, you'd come to this site to learn about what font to use, what color scheme to use, etc. Let's take a quick tour of this site. Now, as I'm scrolling down, I hope you'll notice that this site looks absolutely beautiful, and it's fast, and it was built entirely out of the box using our out-of-box web parts and our out-of-box layouts, and authored using that same page authoring technology that Nicole showed you earlier. So you did just see how you can make a news post your own. Now let's look at how you might be able to make a site your own. If you are a site owner, which I am in this case, you can go to the gear and you get the option to change the look. So when I click on that, you'll see these are all the things I can change about this site. The first is the theme. So when I scroll down, you'll notice that SharePoint provides 8 out-of-the-box themes. And let's actually click into any one of them. As I click around the main colors, just note that the accent colors are changing. And it's doing this because we want our out-of-box color combinations to not only look great, but also to meet the bar for accessibility contrast ratios. So in this way, thank you. So in this way, SharePoint provides several out-of-the-box color combinations. But we also realize that in many cases, it's important to you to have your company's colors reflected in the site theme. And we make it easy for you to have custom themes as well. And you can do that using our Fabric UI theme generator. I won't spend a lot of time on this tool, but I'll give you a quick overview here. So you can see you can provide your 3 top-level colors over here. And that results in a few derived colors, all of which you can individually update as well. Down below, you see how that theme impacts various elements in SharePoint. And even further down, we're giving you information about the accessibility contrast ratio of this current theme. Now, once you're happy with this theme, you're able to use any one of these 3 methods to bring it into SharePoint, including our beloved PowerShell command. So I'll jump back into the site. We already have a few custom themes right here, and I'll just go ahead and select one of them. Next, let's look at the header. So if you would like to save space, you can use the compact header. We've also recently made it possible for you to have a non-square logo for your site. So let me actually do that. I have a non-square logo on the desktop, and I'm going to just bring it in here. And you can see that shows up beautifully on the site header. You can also set header emphasis. So in this case, I think the strong emphasis looks pretty great, but if you would like, you can change it to soft or neutral, or just leave the header emphasis blank. I'll go back to strong. Next, we have the navigation. So earlier, we just had the cascading navigation, but based on a lot of user feedback, we've recently shipped the mega menu. which allows you to see all your options all at once. And in fact, this is the default selection out of the box today. And finally, we've shipped a footer. So let me scroll down to show that to you. And you can toggle that on and off. You can upload a logo. And you can set up navigation links just as easily as adding them right here. So now I have a question for the room. How many of you have seen or heard of the SharePoint Lookbook? I think that's about 50% of you, which is a great number. So the SharePoint Lookbook is sort of styled like a fashion magazine, but for SharePoint. And it shows you the different ways that you can have SharePoint meet the unique needs of your organization. So today, we do have some physical copies of the lookbook right there. So you can come up at the end of this session and pick it up till stocks last. And if you don't get to grab a physical copy, I'll give you a link to the lookbook in just a second. But today, I want to show you a really cool addition we've made on top of the lookbook, which is the SharePoint Online Provisioning Service. So this service contains many of the sites that are in the lookbook for you to download into your tenant with the click of a few buttons. Remember that brand.contoso site? If you really like that, that's here too. So you can click here and click a couple more times, and you can have this site in your tenant. I highly encourage you to give this provisioning service a try and download a few of these sites into your tenant. And once you've done that, of course, you'll need to change the content and change the theme and change the logo using the methods that we've shown you here today. But this provisioning service gives you that great starting point that you should absolutely leverage. So with that, I'll jump back to the slides. Great. We just did the demo. Here are some links at the end of the session. We have a more detailed slides with way more resources, so perhaps you can wait to take a photograph of that. So now let's jump yet another level up. So far, you've seen how to author beautiful news posts and create purposeful sites. But just creating all of them isn't good enough. You need to be able to organize your intranet, and that's where you should leverage SharePoint Hubs. Hubs help you organize your intranet by bringing together related sites into logical units. And in doing so, it delivers tangible benefits to the end user. All sites in a hub share a navigation. The associated sites inherit site designs and themes from the parent hub, while the hub itself rolls up news, activities, and events, and provides search across the entire hub. In doing all of this, hubs help create consistency in your intranet and help with site governance. So let's actually look at all of this play out again in demos. I'm now on the global sales team site. You can see that this site currently belongs to the Sales Hub. And the way you can tell is because of this middle layer of navigation that exists between the suite nav and the site header. And in fact, this is that hub navigation that's shared by all the sites in the hub. But this team has recently been reorganized from the sales part of the company to the global marketing part of the company. So first, I'm going to show you how flexible hubs are, allowing you to have the structure of your intranet reflect the structure of your company. So if I have the right permissions, which in this case I do, again, I can go to the gear and look at site information. And down below, I get the option to change the hub. So I'm going to go ahead and associate this site with the global marketing hub and hit save. And within a matter of seconds, you should see the site theme change, the navigation will change, and that global marketing hub will start pushing down a site design that should start applying, as you can see right there. Thank you. I'll jump to the hub site now. You can see that it has that same theme. It has that same navigation as we saw in this site. And when I scroll down, the homepage of the hub site has the news web part set up, and it's pulling from news posts across the hub. Global sales will start showing up here soon as well, and it provides search across the hub. Now, I want to draw your attention to a feature that we shipped in January that was highly requested, which is the ability to create a site directly from the hub. Now, to do this, all you need to do is click on the Create Site button right here. And then you should see the very familiar site creation flow. So let's just say I want to create a communication site. You can fill out the rest of this information. And within a matter of seconds, again, you have that site that's associated with the hub. For the purposes of this demo, I already created a hub from an associated site from the Global Marketing Hub. So let's take a look. You can see it shares the theme. It has that navigation. And that site design, in this case, it's finished applying. So let's take a look at what it did. It created a list called Marketing Projects. It added it to the nav. It added guidelines to the nav. It updated the ownership of the site. And it updated the logo. So let's go ahead and refresh the site to see all of these changes apply. And here you can see that list, Marketing Projects, exists in the nav. So let's click in. So here you have this list set up with all the right columns already defined. Consider how cool it is that when a site is created from a hub or joins a hub, the hub can enforce that that site maintains this list of marketing products. And I have to use this opportunity to emphasize that hubs not only create consistency in look and feel and permissions and navigations across your intranet, but they also help with business processes by enforcing that associated sites adhere to these business processes that it pushes down. So with that, I'll jump back to the slides. Hopefully, you were able to see all of these points in action. And I'll hand over to Dave to bring us home.
Nice. Thank you, Debjani. So today in modern SharePoint, your internet architecture probably looks something like this, right? You have your communication sites or your team sites hooked up to hubs as associated sites. And you might have some standalone sites hanging out there. And as we've been on this journey to provide a full modern intranet, some feedback that we get is, my most important site, where does that go? How does that fit into this model? To the real problem for your end users, how does it stand out? How do people get to it? How do they find it? Because SharePoint now has, instead of a top-down hierarchy, we have more of a flexible hub-and-spoke model. So with that, this morning we launched home sites. Home sites create that conceptual top of your intranet. It is the landing experience for everyone in your organization. And along with it, we've revamped the SharePoint start page. So the two of these sit side by side as the conceptual top of your intranet. We'll get into the details of the home site in a second. I'll jump into a demo and show you how it plays with the SharePoint start page. That interaction is interesting. But at a high level, and this is just recapping the notes that you've seen in from the keynote, we aim to connect the workplace with intelligent search and rich navigation on this most important site. It is a showcase for news and information, and you can leverage audience targeting to make it even more personally relevant to everyone who goes there. It allows you to discover personal, relevant content from across Office 365. We have new capabilities that we've launched in the last few months, giving users insight into the documents that they work in regularly, the sites that they visit. It is a place for important organizational conversations. And so we have a brand new Yammer web part that can be put on this page as well. Stream with intelligent video is incredibly important in the enterprise. It is how most executives are starting to share a lot of their messages, and we're actually seeing that move its way down. Stream is being democratized as well. And then lastly, it needs to be available on any device, and it has to work across devices. And those same paths that create that conceptual landing place, we talked about it in the keynote, the branding and the suite header and the link that will always bring you back to this page wherever you are, that has to work on mobile too, right? You can't just build this for the worker at a desk. It has to work for anyone wherever they are. So with that, let's jump in. So here I am on my home site. A question that you might ask me is, Dave, how did you create this home site? You haven't showed us how you created it. It started life as a communication site. I didn't actually create the home site. I created a communication site, and then I promoted it to a home site. So this is not a new site template. You can take any communication site that you have in your organization today, and you can promote that to be your home site. The link that we talked about, wherever your end users are in Microsoft 365, they'll have a branded link to get back to this landing page. Moving down the page, we've adjusted the site header. Debjani had talked about this. So now you can have more header options. You can add a color emphasis to it. And because these sites tend to provide lots and lots of resources, and they have to because they're serving the widest audience at your organization, we built an out-of-the-box mega menu to facilitate that navigation need. In the past, this was a fully custom element. Now it's just a built-in capability that anyone can go and leverage. Walking down the page a little more, we have a new carousel layout for SharePoint News. And what's important, and Nicole had touched on this, is that the news in this part is organized. It's curated. So the site owner is deciding what news posts go into this part, how long they stay in that part, and what the order is. That site owner can even decide whether or not this carousel auto-rotates and how long it stays on each news post. That's not something that they had to go and ask a developer to go and adjust. That's a WYSIWYG control that they can go and adjust to see how they see fit. So going down a little more, we have a news part. You'll see the organizational news badge here. One of the superpowers that we referenced when you promote a site to be a home site is that that site becomes an organizational news site. It's just built right into the feature. If you don't want that, you can undo that part of it. You don't have to take it all. So now people know that when they see news from this site, it'll have that same badging to give it the importance that it needs in the different news rollups. One thing I also want to touch on is because this site started life as a communication site, when you search on the site before, it would default to site scope search. But once you make this a home site, we change that. We say, no, we think that you want to search your entire tenant. And so the default search scope for this site is your entire organization. Now, we know that these sites are serving a really wide audience, right? And this part is only showing 4 news posts. So how does this part pull news from such a broad set of sources? Because it is rolling up news from probably 10 different sites. How does it show news that's personally relevant to the person that's visiting the page? This is where our new modern audience targeting feature comes in. This is a simplified way of doing audience targeting. You just use the Azure Active Directory groups that you already have, mail-enabled security groups, Office 365 groups, dynamic groups. Just like you saw Nicole edit metadata right there on a news post, you can add audiences as metadata on a news post. And when someone comes into a page that might serve them that post, the news web part with audience targeting enabled will look at the groups tagged for that post, and it will compare those groups to what groups I'm a member of. If I'm in that one of those groups that's tagged on that post, I will see that news post. If I'm not in one of those groups, I won't see that news post. It's a simple way of making sure that the information you're showing on this page that's trying to fit a broad audience is very personally relevant, and it's very dynamic. So scrolling down a bit more, you'll see one of the new design elements we have in modern pages. The vertical column here on the right. So this is a column that spans the horizontal sections of the page. It's just like any other column in modern pages. You can put web parts within it, and its scroll behavior is a bit different. Those web parts will span the page vertically, whereas today, if you were to put web parts in a single column, they would just keep pushing the page down. One of the reasons we did that, and you'll see it in this design, is that when we were doing our research about what these big landing pages in intranets needed was they had to balance 2 different needs for their end users. At the top, corporate communications managers have to have content that's broadly applicable to everyone in the organization, and it's important that everyone see that. But at the same time, they acknowledge that for people to want to come to this page, they have to see content that's personally relevant to them and helps them do their work. And so we think that in this design, and you could choose to put these parts wherever, the My Recent Documents, My Frequent Sites, My Recommended Items, which is the highlighted content web part scoped to me, searching for my content, and then even my team's calendar. This gives me a personal reason to come to this page and get back to my work, and I'm seeing the broad organizational content that the leaders in my organization want me to see. We have Stream, and if I keep going down, we have a Twitter web part where I can show my employees the voice that we're speaking to our customers with. And then we have our brand new Yammer web part that's fully interactive. So I can embed conversations that I want to highlight here, and people can reply, they can like, they can take part in these conversations right from this page. So another superpower that this gets is you'll notice this link called My SharePoint. And this gets to what I just talked about having personally relevant information. We were really trying to balance what we called the me and the we content, right? The content that's broadly applicable and the content that's applicable to me. This link gets auto-provisioned and added to the navigation of the site, and it takes the user to the new SharePoint start page. This is a completely personal page, right? This is my content. This is news from the sites that I work in, the people I work with, and the sites that I follow. These are my frequent sites, so this is helping me get back to my work. But you'll notice that it's carried over the branding and the navigation from the home site, almost as though it's a page within the home site. And so our goal here is to help end users get back to their work, but also create a really symbiotic relationship with that landing page. And we know that that's been a struggle for people designing intranets for a long time. You can see here at the bottom of this revamped page, we also have an expanded view of the My Recent Documents, and we have a section for My Saved Content in SharePoint, so news posts and pages. And the last superpower that this gets, and this should work, no. 1 second. Oh, almost. Okay. So, hello? Okay. This is the Find tab in the SharePoint mobile app. This is the tab that you land into when you open the app, and you'll notice that we have a new icon in the upper right. Right? So we've given prominent billing to this capability. When I tap that icon, I'm taking right to my organization's home site. So wherever your end users are, whatever device that they're on, they can always, in one tap, get back to the most important site on the intranet. So with that, I want to switch back to my demo machine. I think I have one more demo for everyone. I'm not sure how many people caught this, but do you see the URL for this home site? It's at the root. This is a hugely requested feature, and I am going to try to demo this today. So let me switch over and show you how you do that. OK, so here you can see a similar site on a different tenant, and all I'm going to do is run a simple PowerShell command. I'm just going to read it real quick. Let's see if that goes. This takes about a minute, which means I have to talk while this goes. So thank you. I'll preempt some questions. How many home sites can I have in an organization? Right? That's a question that we're sure will come up. Right now, you can have one. We're looking at ways of having multiple home sites, but an end user would always have one, but we understand there's a need for that. And so we're looking into it. So that supposedly worked. So let's see. Expected. Oh, don't. So we talked about the kind of evolution of how I started with a communication site, not at the root. I designed it to look and feel the way I wanted it to operate. I talked about the new capabilities that we have within it. We have new authoring and curation capabilities so that it meets the highest need. And then we promoted it to a home site. I know I didn't show that PowerShell command. That one's really not that exciting. It just makes all the things that we talked about happen. And then in about 30 seconds, someone will have to check the video and tell me how long that took. In about 30 seconds, we moved it to the root of my tenant, and it's fully operational. So with that, I'll bring it back to our slides. So this was a very high-level overview of the intelligent intranet. We think that modern SharePoint is ready to power all of your intranet scenarios, especially your largest portals. Right? Communication sites have really grown up. Home sites is the end of that. Kind of like when Captain Marvel realizes the full potential of her abilities, home sites get superpowers. That's what we think home sites does to communication sites. Everyone take a photo. This is the slide you all wanted. I know, you just sat through the whole thing to get to the roadmap slide. A couple things I want to call out. Coming soon, if not already in your tenant, page templates. Audience targeting for news pages and highlight content. The organization assets feature that Nicole showed you. Some modern page updates. The vertical column that I demoed, that's coming soon. Later this year, home sites, big one. News and page scheduling. We didn't demo it, but it is coming later this year. The ability to schedule a future date for publishing a news post. Multilingual content publishing. That's probably the biggest project our team is working on. It's a big effort, but we know that that's a major pain point for a lot of you, and we're working on it. Moving a modern site to the root. That is also coming later this year. There are some things that we still have to work out with it, even though the demo was completely successful. And then top of mind, hub enhancements. So we're working on a couple of things to give hubs even more capabilities. Branding updates. We're really thinking hard about what capabilities you need in communication sites to meet your brand requirements. So here's what you do. I talk to a lot of customers that have an intranet either on premises or in the cloud on classic SharePoint, and they want to move to modern, but they're not sure how. What do? Go to the lookbook site. We actually have some physical lookbooks up here on stage. They'll be available afterwards. But go to the lookbook. It's hard to think about what you would want your new modern intranet to look like. So the lookbook will help you with that. We have a design guidance site. So if you're building your own web parts, how to make those look good in our framework. And the Modern Intranet Planning Guide helps you figure out what your information architecture should be, how to design your hubs. Then build a plan, right? You have to go into this building a plan for how you're going to modernize that content and how you're going to organize your sites together. We've given you what the top should be in home sites. You know that's coming, and you know that you're not blocked on that because you can promote any communication site to be a home site later. And then finally, start building. Build one site, right? Or if you're moving to the cloud, that's an excellent opportunity to start fresh and start with a fully modern intranet. If you can't do that, enable self-service site creation in the cloud and unlock your end users to go and create their own modern sites, because you heard from our customer panel about how easy it is to do that, and the time to value is so fast that you almost have an imperative to bring that value to your organization. Fast Track is an awesome benefit if you have SharePoint Online. There's a Fast Track booth in the expo hall. I highly recommend you go and you talk to them. And then lastly, I do want to save some time for questions, but I'd like to bring out Nicole and Debjani again, and we'd like to say thank you. You all make this possible, so thank you. One last point, yes, take a picture of this. These are awesome resources. The customers that we had for our panel are going to be up here at the front as well to help answer questions. I know it's great to get their perspective. So please come on up, talk to us. We want to hear from you. Thank you.